Hi everyone, welcome back to Novel Idea. My name is Dia, and today I'm going to go over the books I read in January. So January, I ended up reading around 22 books. Some of those were short stories, some of those were collections of poetry. So it sounds like a lot, but it was probably more like about 18 books, maybe, that were like novels. Let's get into it so that this video is not 2 hours long, shall we? My tea today is Bengal spice. I wanted something very warming because it is blowing like crazy outside. It is about 2 degrees, maybe colder with the wind chill factor. And so I just needed a big cozy sweater and drinking my warming spicy tea. All right, so the first book I will tell you is a DNF, and that is A Shropshire Lad. I thought I was going to be reading this poetry collection like over the entire month. I was gonna leave it on my bedside and just do a little every night, and I got a little ways into it and it was so dark and so depressing, and I, number one, could not do it at night right before bed, and number two, I couldn't do it at all. I just got to the point where I was like, this is not what I need to be reading right now. Morgan is my name. This is a story of King Arthur and his sister, Morgan Le Fay. And even though I really enjoyed the writing style of this book, the content choices of the author were not my favorite. I read a couple of Russian short stories. One was The Overcoat, and this is by, I believe, Nikolai Gogol. I'm not exactly sure what the author was trying to say. I need to reread it and do a little bit of digging, because I'm sure that there was something there that I missed. But I did like the writing of it very much. And then White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This was for Tiffany at Beautiful Minutia's Patreon group. This is another short story. It was about a young man who is a dreamer and meets a girl who he immediately falls in love with. I found out that Dostoevsky was kind of trying to be satirical about the romance novels of the day and just kind of the way that things happen in them. That made me like this story so much more once I found that out, because I didn't up until that point. It's definitely not a favorite short story by Dostoevsky, but it was still a good one. I read The Teller of Small Fortunes. I don't remember a whole lot about this book. It was one of the very first that I read in January, and I do remember some things about it, but it just kind of fell flat for me. That may be because just coming off the heels of Brandon Sanderson's 1,300 page tome. And so maybe that's the reason why it did. I was told it was going to be cozy and it was really cute. I can remember the premise of the book, but I don't remember anything else about it. So yeah, it just didn't do anything for me. I had a buddy read with Dave and Olive from Book Blather. We read Tarzan the Untamed. I am so enjoying reading these with Dave and Olive. They're just plain fun. This one was a little different. We kind of missed our superhero-esque Tarzan. He got beat up a lot more and didn't recover quite as quickly from getting beat up. People were able to sneak up on him. I mean, there were just all kinds of things that were like, wait a minute, this isn't our normal Tarzan. But something happened at the beginning of the book that we didn't know whether it was real and true or not until the very end of the book. We had all these conspiracy theory kind of things flying around because we just didn't know. And we kept expecting Burroughs to tell us something, and he kept it literally until like the last couple of sentences of the book. So that was fun. Really enjoyed my time. Unnecessary Woman. This is by Rabih Alameddine. I wish I had better things to say about this book. I think I read this with Katja from Page Turners with Katja, and I think she ended up liking it quite a bit more than I did. At first, when I was talking with her, I thought by the end of it, I thought maybe I would give it 3 stars or a score equal to 3 stars. But I think that my scoring would equal more like 2 3/4 stars or 2.5 maybe. This just was not the book for me. I think that Rabih Alameddine does a fairly good job of writing an elderly, single, divorced, introverted, bookish woman in Beirut, and it takes place over her whole lifetime. It's a journal kind of thing where we're looking back on her life. And so we see this kind of through memories that she's telling us about. But some of the things that happened in way too much detail, and the choice of language in the book also, it was jarring to me at times. And there are some situations that happened that I really didn't want to read. At first, I thought I was really gonna like our protagonist because she was spunky and snarky a little bit. And so I thought that I was just like really going to like her, but that snark and things kind of, it went a little dark, and it went on and on and on and on in every situation. And every time she talked about herself, and every time she talked about her ex-husband, and every time she talked about men in general, pretty much. So it got a little, it wore on me. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I had hoped to. She has a lot of authors and quotes and different things that she weaves into the story, or that Rabih Alameddine weaves in there for her. However, with how little I liked her by the end, I'm not sure that I want to read books that she is quoting from and recommending, and books that she loves. I'm not sure that I would want to read those. I did like the end. I did think that there was hope maybe for her to, in these last years of her life, to be a different kind of person. But it was too little too late for me. I wanted that earlier. Not my favorite. I read Robot Dreams by Isaac Asimov. It's a collection of short stories, typical to a collection of short stories. There were some that I liked more than others, but none of them did I like as well as Bicentennial Man. I think that that one is going to be hard to beat. But I'm going to read more Asimov because I still really liked several of them, even though they weren't the fabulousness that was Bicentennial Man. I reread Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. It's book 2 in the Hunger Games. About the same as how I felt about it the first time through. Quarter Quell this time is going to be all of the winners of the Hunger Games from the past. And so we join Katniss and Peeta in the arena once again. The way that Catching Fire ends leaves you kind of hanging. And so I was very anxious to get on to Mockingjay. I read a book called Damsel. This is by Evelyn Skye. And I have read other books by her that I really enjoyed. And so I thought I would pick this one up. It was a library like cover thing. I saw it and I was like, ooh, I like this author. I really liked it. We have our main character who is from a country that is not very prosperous and really has to struggle to stay alive. Main character is kind of the princess of that land, and she works right alongside of her people, and she loves them, and she fully expects to commit the rest of her life to helping them. But she gets a proposal of marriage and accepts as a way of making sure that provisions are coming to her own country. It's like an alliance kind of marriage, and yet she thinks that she really is going to like this man that she has committed to marry. But there's some nefarious things going on behind the scenes, and it's the story of this mystery unfolding and her becoming a really true queen and leader of people. It was just a great story. Highly recommend. Thought it was great. Good Things Out of Nazareth. This is a collection of letters to and from Flannery O'Connor, and it encompasses just all of life. It was at a time where letters were the main form of communication for long distances, and there was an art to them, and many of Flannery's friends that she was writing to were authors also, and so they're just fantastic to get this little peek in the window of their lives from an angle that I've never experienced before. They're like just very open and very honest because she's writing to friends and friends are writing to her. And so, yeah, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I read Arsene Lupin, Gentleman Thief by Maurice LeBlanc, and these were kind of episodic chapters about Arsene, kind of his backstory, which was my favorite part of the book, but then also doing the impossible and pulling the wool over the police eyes. It was a little bit of a Robin Hood. So he only steals in order to better something or someone else. And I thought it was fun. Really enjoyed it. It was a good time. Eleanor of Avignon. And this is completely fictional, but it is taking place in Avignon during the Black Death. And our main character, Eleanor, is an herbalist in a time when herbalists were often burned at the stake as witches. She tries to keep a low profile. She comes to the attention of the surgeon of the Pope, who is in Avignon at the time. He invites her to become his apprentice, and then the Black Death hits. A queen from Italy is kind of stuck in Avignon. She also then becomes the midwife for the queen. And it's just kind of her story. And I thought it was beautifully written. I found out about it from a book olive. There was a lot of very descriptive cases of the Black Plague and what that looked like on human bodies that's described. So if that's not your thing, don't read this book. I thought that her story was really compelling. This was a good one. I reread Mysteries of Udolpho. This is by Anne Radcliffe, and I wanted to reacquaint myself with her writing. It's a gothic terror novel, and it is about a young girl who is traveling around with her family, meets a young man, falls in love, and ends up attracting the attention of someone who cannot have her. The story that unfolds from there. Anne Radcliffe has the most beautiful writing as far as descriptions of scenes, all of the places that they're traveling through. Just really, really beautiful. It was fun. It was a good one. A Gathering of Days. This is by Joan. I can't remember her last name. There'll be a picture up somewhere. This was journal entries of a young girl, and it was just beautiful. Life in early America and what her days looked like. It was one of my favorites in the month, definitely. Just a simple, easy, quiet child's journey through her days, and really beautiful. Oscar and the Pink Lady. This is by Eric Emanuel Schmidt, and I heard about this from Camilla at Hasty Books. It is about a 10-year-old boy who has been diagnosed with cancer and is living life currently in the children's hospital. And he has other kids in the hospital who also have chronic illnesses of some sort. A candy striper lady who is quite a bit older, and she becomes his confidant and his friend. He doesn't know quite how to deal with things, and so she suggests that he begin to write to God and write letters to God about what he fears or what he's angry about, or if there's something that he wants to see happen. And so he decides to go ahead and do it. He doesn't know God. He doesn't know anything about God. He doesn't believe in God, but he decides to write these letters. And it's not all letters. There's story, and then with the letters are, I'm going to use Heather's term here, they are nested into the story. It was just really precious. I really enjoyed it. We read Liriel, which is book 2 in the Old Kingdom trilogy by Garth Nix. We read Sabriel last year, and this was with Gemma from Gemma Books, and Jack from Spread Book Joy, and Sandy from Ms. Reads a Lot, and I loved it. I loved it. It was so much fun to revisit and to be back with one of my all-time favorite animal companions. And I just really like the character of Liriel, very much connected with Sabriel, but a completely different story, and a really fabulous, fabulous character. And so it leaves us on a cliffhanger. So we will be reading Abhorsen in March. Same magic system, a little bit different magic system that is also introduced in this book. So I really love Garth Nix's writing. I think he does an amazing job. I read 2 collections of poetry, or 2 works of poetry for the We Love Jenny readathon. Petrarch's selections from the Canzoniere or Canzoniere, I don't know. And they were beautiful. They were so, so beautiful. She did not steer me wrong with that one. I think that was the very last recommendation I got from Jenny before she passed away. And then I also read La Vita Nuova, and this is by Dante. And this was kind of a poem to a woman that he loved, but never was able to have a relationship with. And so he loved her from afar, basically. He wrote her a poem. It was so touching and just absolutely lovely. I did manage to read 2 works of poetry, even though I DNF'd Shropshire Lad. Then I read So Big. This is by Edna Ferber, and it's a Pulitzer Prize winning novel. My friend Amy from Harthridge had put on her Instagram that she had really enjoyed this book. And so I decided to go ahead and pick it up and read it. And I really enjoyed it also. One of those books that is that elevated mundanity that I just gravitate towards in this era of my life. It was about a woman who was quite smart, and she fell in love, and when she got married, she stopped working, and they had children, and then her husband passes away quite suddenly, and she is left with a farm and a young boy, and she has to make life work. She has to provide. The way that she goes about things without losing her joy, without becoming bitter or becoming frazzled and worn out, and keeps this beauty about her soul as she does it. And just the things that become important to her son as opposed to what's important to her. It was just a really, really good book. I really enjoyed it. I read Dragon Slippers by Jessica Day George. This is a middle grade. It's about a young girl who befriends a dragon, or a dragon befriends her. She creates works of embroidery that are quite beautiful, and she designs them and puts them together herself. She wants her own store, and some slippers are given to her by a different dragon, and when they are given to her, she is unaware that they are magical. It's a story of friendship and loyalty, beauty of being honest, and just, it was great. I really liked it. I read Street of Riches by Gabrielle Waugh with my friend Sandra, and this was our third Gabrielle Waugh that we have read together, and I don't want to read Gabrielle Waugh without Sandra. I just so appreciate reading the works of Waugh with her because we speak the same language. In the time of life that we are in, and the things that we think through and that stand out to us are almost always very similar. But Sandra has a way of drawing my attention more closely to a thought or a feeling or an emotion of a moment. And we always tell each other stories while we're doing it, because these books just remind us so much of days gone by. And so we just have the best time together reading these books. I don't think that it is going to top Children of My Heart, but it was still really fabulous, about a little girl, the youngest of a fairly large family, who are like early settlers of their town that they're in. There are just all these memories that come up, and there's some that are sad and some that are funny and some that are just absolutely touching, but every single one of them has Wa's ability to place you within the story, make things feel so real around you as you're reading. It's magical. I loved that one. The Magic Apple Tree, and this is by Susan Hill, and this is nonfiction, and it was also quite lovely. It's about her year in the countryside, moving out of the city with her little family, fixing up this cottage and living in this little community where they really do help one another and work together and have fun and laugh, and it has recipes in it, and it has all kinds of anecdotes, and it was just brilliant. I loved it. Those were my reads for January. Thanks for sticking in with me if you're still here. I'm probably one of the last ones to get my January wrap up. So I may already know what your favorite book was for January, but you can tell me again in the comments. I would love to know what your favorite book was. Oh, I should say this. For Epistolary January, The Magic Apple Tree, Street of Riches, Oscar and the Pink Lady, A Gathering of Days, Eleanor of Avignon, Good Things Out of Nazareth, and An Unnecessary Woman, and Damsel, actually, all had letters either in them, or they were completely letters, or they were journal entries, that kind of thing. All of those counted for Epistolary January. And then I already told you that I read Canzonieri and La Vida Nuova for We Love Jenny. So those were the two things really that I was taking part in January, and those ones all counted. Oh, and then I used the cover of, well, not just the cover, the whole thing. The Magic Apple Tree was Beauty, which is Chantel Reads All Days, Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. That word was the word for this for January. And so I used The Magic Apple Tree because it was not only a beautiful cover, in my opinion, but it was also a beautiful life and a beautiful story. Okay, thanks everybody. I will see you again in another video very soon.